Al hadvash ve'al ha'oketz, al hamar ve'hamatok, al kol ele, al kol ele. For the honey and for the stinger, for the bitter and the sweet. The last time I spoke to you from this pulpit, it was Yom Kippur last year, and at that time I taught you the meaning of this song, and I gave you the gift of an Israeli flag. Last year, my appeal to all of you was to be Al Kol Ele Jews, struggling with both the pain and the sweetness of Jewish life. Little did I know at that time how this paradigm would be stress-tested, as this year has seen a lot of pain. So much pain, and not enough sweetness. If last year we were hoping, striving Jews, this year we are wounded Jews, uncertain of our place in the world, insecure. And I thought for a good long time, what do you need from me this year? And what can I offer you? What makes my job a little bit easier is that I know that the most important statement that we will make here today is not anything I might say, not my words, but the fact that you are here, that we are all here together. That says it all. That thousands of Jews are gathering here to welcome a new year, just as our ancestors have for thousands of years, to hear the sound of the shofar, to dip apples in honey, to hold a machzor, to utter a prayer. We've done it in periods of peace and in periods of war. We've done it in times of prosperity and in adversity. This is what we do. We show up for each other and for Jewish life. So I'm not sure what I have to offer you today, but I'll do my best. And I invite you to take my hand, and together we will find a way forward together. In my bewilderment this year, I found a new kind of Jew that I think may be better suited to this moment. It's the kind of lover of Israel and lover of life, modeled by Rachel and John Goldberg-Polin, parents of Rosh, Zichrono Livracha, of blessed memory. An Israeli rabbi, Mishael Tzion, was leaving the tent where the Goldberg-Polin family were sitting Shiva in Jerusalem, and a producer from a Tel Aviv news show saw the rabbi's kippah and asked him, "What kind of a religious Jew are you?" And he was confused and a little annoyed by the worn-out question, but he stopped and thought for a moment, and he answered, "I'm a Rachel and John kind of Jew." And the producer immediately understood what he meant. Now, I don't know Rachel Goldberg-Polin, but I feel like after this year, she's become part of my extended family, and I know many of you feel the same. By no choice of their own, Rachel and John became internationally known spokespeople for the Israeli hostage families, translating their experience, their desperation, and their pain for anyone and everyone who would listen, and far too often, there were far too few people who would. In this year of inhumanity, Rachel has been a human being, a moral powerhouse. She's been the strongest, most heroic person in the world. In other words, she's been the epitome of a Jewish mother who loves her child. Is there any more powerful force in the world than that? Every time we pray as Jews, every time we open our machzor and we begin an Amidah, we invoke our ancestors and their historic connection to God. We acknowledge God's might and sovereignty over our lives, and we say, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob. And now in our new Siddur, there's an option to add God of Sarah, God of Rebecca, God of Rachel, and God of Leah. All year I have lingered on Elohei Rachel, on the God of Rachel, trying somehow to channel her faith, her connection to God. No matter how sad or angry or confused I felt this year, it was nothing to what she was going through. And yet she soldiered on. She went to the UN. She went to the White House. She went to the border of Gaza with a megaphone, and she cried out, "Hirsch, if you can hear me, it's your mother. I love you. Stay alive. Survive. We're doing everything we can to bring you home." While strong men huddled in war rooms, some motivated by power, some by hate, some by greed, while they planned and attacked and commanded, while they moved pawns around some brutal chessboard, Rachel was weeping and crying out loud. The voices of women are too often overlooked in our textual tradition and even today, like the women observers in the IDF who warned of a potential attack leading up to October 7th, but were ignored by the top brass. The biblical Rachel is a beloved woman, a caring big sister to Leah, the apple of Jacob's eye, and she yearns to become a mother. But like so many women in the Bible and even today, it didn't come easy to her. In one of our high holiday prayers, we call upon God saying, "Mi she'ana l'Rachel," may the one who answered Rachel in her sadness for a child, may that same God answer us, Hu Ya'anenu. She is ultimately blessed with a child, but she dies in childbirth. With her dying breath, she names her child Binyamin, Ben Oni, the son of my sorrow, my affliction. She's buried on the road to Bethlehem because she died on the journey. But the prophet Yirmiyahu, the prophet Jeremiah, gives Rachel a second life. He imagines that when Israel is kicked out of their land by Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians and are going into exile, traveling that very same road on the path to Bethlehem, because of where Rachel is buried, the prophet Jeremiah imagines her coming out and lamenting our destruction. She's weeping over her children in the description of Jeremiah. And here it's not just her immediate family, but her descendants, the children of Israel, generations later. Rachel mevaka al baneha. Rachel is weeping over her children. She refuses to be comforted because her children are away, says Jeremiah. She prays for mercy, and her prayers are so powerful that God is stirred. God cannot ignore her. God answers, Yesh tikva la'acharitech. There is hope for your future. Vishavu banim ligvulech. Your children will return to your borders. Rachel's voice, Rachel's tears, as awful as they have been, as hard as they've been to hear, somehow have been the only thing that have made sense to me this year. It's not a coincidence that we read those words, Rachel weeping over her children, as the Haftarah for second day Rosh Hashanah. We'll read it tomorrow. It's as if the tradition wants us to listen to the crying tears of a mother, because that's the only thing that might motivate us to do tshuva, to do better, to change. But I also think it's to comfort us. Imagining our matriarch crying as we go into exile somehow feels cathartic and healing. My mother, who's here today, is a crier, and she passed that on to me as well. She's already crying. We used to laugh at her that she used to cry at diaper commercials because of the babies. She taught me through her example that tears at a bris, at a wedding, and yes, at a funeral, can be cleansing and purifying. Our tradition tells us that the sound of the shofar itself is meant to evoke the sound of weeping mothers, crying, Teruah. Think about how many of these mothers we mention in our liturgy. Sarah weeping over the binding of her son Isaac, Rachel, Hannah, who desperately wants to have a child, Hagar, who we read about this morning, who tries to protect her banished son in the wilderness. It does not matter to God that he is not the chosen son. God still hears Hagar's cries and responds to her pain. God cannot ignore a mother crying, and neither can we. Rachel Goldberg-Pollen cried, but she also roared like a lioness. She spoke with a clear moral voice. In this way, she was not only like the biblical Rachel, but she was also like the biblical heroines, Devorah, Shifra, and Puah, Michal, Queen Esther, a heroine of the Jewish people because of her courage. When she went to the UN, she simply wanted the Red Cross to do its job and give some report as to the status of her son, a basic request for human rights that was denied, either because of the Red Cross' inability or unwillingness to do its job. So she flew to New York with a piece of tape across her heart, marking the days of agony she'd endured since Hirsch was taken from her, and she said the following words: "When you only get outraged when one side's babies get killed, then your moral compass is broken and your humanity is broken, and therefore all of us everywhere on planet Earth must really ask ourselves, do I aspire to be human?" She concluded her remarks by talking about the one thing that gave her hope from that day of October 7th. She learned from a witness of the atrocities that day that while young people were huddled in a bomb shelter, one Bedouin man who was with them had the courage to go out and try to talk to the terrorists. He went outside and he said in Arabic, "I'm Muslim. Everyone inside here is my family. We are Muslim. You don't have to search in there." Rachel said he could have just said, "I'm a Muslim," and saved himself. But he tried to do the right thing, even though it was terrifying and even though it required unimaginable courage, knowing that there was someone trying to do the right thing when everything in the universe had turned upside down. And we would not have blamed Rachel if she focused on her son alone and what the world owed her. But as Jews, we have never lingered on our victimhood, though we've been victimized. We've never spent a lot of time pitying ourselves. Instead, we transform our suffering into resolve to build a better world. In the Talmud, Rav Avira taught that it was because of the righteous women of the generation of the Israelites who were enslaved in Egypt that the people of Israel were redeemed. Because of the righteous women of this generation, I pray, I believe, Israel will be redeemed. As has been plainly evident in recent days, we need the kind of valiant heroism of soldiers and fighters to keep us safe from those who wish us harm. The kinds of soldiers and pilots and military commanders who risk their lives to fulfill their duty. Those heroes deserve our praise and our recognition. Israel has no shortage of them. If you want to learn more of those stories, I recommend that you read a book that came out this summer and was translated into English recently. It's called Yom Echad Be'Oktober, One Day in October, 40 stories of heroism from that day. I read it over the summer and was so moved by the strength and heroism of ordinary Israelis who were called upon in extreme circumstances to do extraordinary things. But that is not the only kind of heroism we need to lift up and celebrate. Rachel's heroism deserves our attention as well. Just seeing her in her frail frame, standing, speaking words of truth and courage, I wanted to utter the blessing, Baruch Ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Blessed is the one who girds Israel with gvura, with strength and heroism. You all know how the story unfolded. It's too much to bear. That the IDF were so close, that the 6 hostages were still alive until the terrorists shot them dead, not long before they would have been rescued. This story should have had a different ending. But as so often has been the case throughout this brutal conflict, there are no winners. Everyone loses. Most of all, the righteous and the innocent. At the funeral, Rachel, weeping over her son, had the spiritual courage to talk about hakarat hatov, gratitude. And as I watched the funeral 5,000 miles away, but close in spirit, I couldn't believe it. I wanted to scream. How can you talk about gratitude at a moment like this? Don't you want to use this moment to lash out, to place blame? Surely there is plenty to go around. But Rachel taught us again the truth that none of us is truly entitled to the blessings of our life, that to be gifted a precious child, even for a short time, is something we didn't earn, but we were gifted as an act of grace. She thanked her community that sustained her and asked them not to abandon her. She said, I apologize deeply, but we're going now to need continued help to get through the sickening new chapter. And I'm sorry to ask because we have given you nothing, and you have already given us so profoundly and completely. I wish I knew how she knew how wrong she is. She has given us more than we deserve. We are the ones who owe her for teaching us how to love our children, how to be voices for the helpless, how to speak out for what is good and right for the sake of all of our children. Some of you may have seen the note that Rachel sent to her community after the Shiva. It's a small minyan in the Baka neighborhood of Jerusalem called Hakel. Coincidentally, it's a minyan that I've had a chance to visit many times before. It's a minyan that I think our synagogue can learn a lot from. It's possible that I have been in the same room in a community center courtyard with folding chairs arranged in rows, praying alongside Rachel and John and maybe even Hirsch, and I didn't even know it. As I've said, I've never met them personally, but as you know, the Jewish community is small. Here's what she wrote to her shul after the Shiva. From the late morning of October 7th, you showed up. Since then, those of you I knew and didn't know have prayed for Hirsch and us, cooked, advocated, took to the streets, cried for us, and tried for us, prayed and prayed and prayed. I felt it. It washed over me. I felt it. And then came that Shiva that was so surreal and unfamiliar, but you all showed up in different ways. You all looked like angels in your bright yellow vests. You were magnificently bossy when needed with the hordes, and gentle, always so gentle with us. I am so relieved we gave Hirsch's battered and abused body a proper, majestic, and halachic burial. I am so relieved that his beautiful neshama is finally free. I will now have to learn to be in this world without him. But having him all the years I did is worth the pain I will have. Worth every tear and sigh and lump in my throat and every pang of pain until it's my turn to be buried next to him when I am 120 and have many grandchildren and great-grandchildren, hopefully one who is named Hirsch. Worth it. Worth it. Truly. Keep davening that we all survive and thrive again somehow, some way, someday, because we will. And may Hirsch's light always inspire us. May his memory be a blessing and a revolution, but not a crazy revolution, just a revolution to think and do differently, to think and do better. Israel couldn't save Hirsch, but maybe Hirsch and Rachel can make Israel worthy of being saved. So what does it mean to be a Rachel kind of Jew? To love our children fiercely, to teach them to love our traditions and love the Jewish people, to love Israel, and also to care about the life of every innocent child, to be courageous and loyal, to resist the seductive allure of hatred, to show up for family and friends and community, and to be thankful when others do so for us, to squeeze gratitude even out of life's most awful circumstances. Now, I want to repeat this because I went through it quickly and I want to give it time to sink in. What does it mean to be a Rachel and John kind of Jew? To love our children fiercely. To teach them to love our traditions and love the Jewish people. To love Israel. And also to care about the life of every innocent child. To be courageous and loyal. To resist the seductive allure of hatred. To show up for family, friends, and community. And to be thankful when others do so for us. To squeeze gratitude even out of life's most awful circumstances. Friends, that is our agenda for this year. Israel has things it needs to do, but these are the things we need to do as American Jews. May we all be inscribed in the book of life. And may we have the courage to use that incredible gift of a life to start a revolution, not a crazy revolution, just a revolution to think and do differently, to think and do better. Shana Tova.